continuing with the theme of what gets people into debt is probably the most seemingly innocuous method, because it's very much a death by a thousand cuts process, and it's something I've given it my own pet names. I sometimes call it the stretch, but you can think of it as instead of you'll hear people say, well, you should live below your means. That's a surefire way to stay out of trouble, barring any disasters, and that's true for the most part. But what you will find as well, especially a lot of people who enter my office, is a lot of people think they live below their means, but what they're really doing is they're living at their means, which means if they make $60,000 a year, they're spending the equivalent of whatever $60,000 after taxes. I think it's about like 48 or something, close to. And if they suddenly get a raise, maybe now they're making 65. Well, they were making this, they were spending that. Now they're making this, and sure enough, they go right up there, to the point where I've had clients, and this is going to sound like I'm picking on them, but I'm using this for illustrative purposes. I've had clients, you could pay them $3 million a year, they'd still be broke. And why? It's very simple. They would spend $3 million a year. This is actually the human condition to a degree. I think I've said this in other videos. We tend to eat whatever's on our plate. If it's there, we eat it. And where I'm going with this, though, is, first of all, if you live at your means instead of below your means, then that means two things. Number one, you're not saving anything. And by at your means, I'm assuming that you don't have money going into RSPs, TFSAs, savings, even universal whole life insurance, anything like that. What I'm saying is whatever you make, that's what gets spent on groceries, gasoline, the car payments, heating, etc. So the first thing, as I said, you don't have any savings. The second thing that happens is all it takes is one little like that, and now you're in trouble. Now you're searching for credit, for loans. You're pulling out the credit card to try to make ends meet, and it doesn't take much. When you're that close to the bone, it can be something as simple as Christmas. I like to say to people, I'll say, look, Christmas is what I call a periodic expense. It's infrequent and it's inconsistent. It kind of, you do it once a year. That's not frequent. When I think of frequency, I don't think of a year. I think of weekly or monthly. But it's also inconsistent. What you spend on Christmas one year may not be what you spend on Christmas the next year. Now, the thing about Christmas is everyone knows when it is. In a way, it doesn't take, when's Christmas? Well, it's December 25th. It doesn't change. It's not a lunar calendar we're dealing with, okay? It's not like it shows up a little, it's not like Hanukkah, which, my family's, when's Hanukkah this year? Well, I don't know. Is it the beginning of December? Is it the end of December? Is it the middle? You never know. You know when Christmas is. But as of this recording, it's July, what's today? July 24th, 2023. You're not thinking about Christmas right now, most likely. And if you're not thinking about Christmas right now and every month you're zeroing out, well, guess what? Come Christmas, you're probably gonna, oh shoot, it's Christmas time. I need more money. I forgot. I don't have any money in the bank. This is gonna make things really tight. You're not thinking about it, and that's a product of not only not having a budget. That's another presentation. That's another video, but it's a product of not prepping, of not taking into account the future, and also, in particularly, living at your means. Now, the reason I called it the stretch earlier is something I see a lot of too, which is very interesting to me, is people stretching themselves to the breaking point, and then being shocked when it all falls apart. I've had a number of people over the years who had two jobs. And you might think, well, great, two jobs, they're working hard, and they are, and they're trying to get extra income, they are. But the reason they had these two jobs wasn't just to pay the bills. They got the second job so they could buy that car they really like. And by that car that they really like, I'm not talking about, well, instead of getting that Civic or whatever it is for, $300-400 something a month, higher now with the interest rates. These are people paying $800-900 a month, possibly $1,000 in their car loans. Seriously, very often these days you almost never see a monthly payment. It's always bi-weekly. That's intentional, by the way, guys. Okay, You may think, oh, they do that so it'll match my paycheck. That's part of it. Okay, that's part of the reason biweekly payments are done with vehicles and other things. But the main reason they're doing it is it deceives the mind. It makes it seem like the payment is more manageable. What seems more manageable? A monthly payment of X or bi-weekly payments of less. And remember, bi-weekly is not what it seems. That's the other dupe. Okay? If I say you can have $500 monthly or $250 bi-weekly, which is cheaper? You may say, well, that's the same thing. No, it's not. $250 bi-weekly is not the same as $500 a month. You may say, well, how's that possible? It's very simple. Twice a year, you're going to have 3 payments in a month. That's an extra $500 a year. That's about an extra $43 no, it's more. It's about an extra $43 a month. So people are paying much more than they realize, and of course they want the car. Cars are weird, In all this time, the number of people I've met who blow their brains out on rent, very minuscule. I doubt I could come up with a dozen out of over 2,000. And yet the number of people who blow their brains out on cars is just staggering, and it's getting worse. And I've heard all kinds of excuses. Oh, it's the only nice thing I have. It's a car. Okay, cars don't go up in value. Well, they do now. Okay, once every 100 years, congratulations. Cars in general do not go up in value. They do not improve with age. And they rob you blind. They pick your pocket, okay? A car always costs more than you think, because you not only have the monthly or bi-weekly payment, you have your insurance, you have your maintenance, and you also have something called gasoline, which is as expensive as ever. So boy, I strayed there. So people blow their brains out with cars, and I've met people who have 2 jobs just so they can afford that car they always wanted. Well, guess what? A lot of the time people lose that second job, or the hours get cut, and now they're going broke because of a freaking car, which was too expensive in the first place, but they were only able to afford it because they got a second job. Guys, just because you can afford it doesn't mean you should get it. Now, there is no perfect number. I've always said, look, if you are able to afford everything and live right at your means, that's not good. You're still tight. Okay, that has to be addressed. And usually people can address that by getting greater income or cutting their expenses. In this case, we have someone who was already living above their means, and now they got a job so they could match. Recipe for disaster, guys, and we see it more and more these days. Maybe I just have a keener eye for it, or maybe it's just my frustration boiling over after all these years. But if you don't have savings already built in to your monthly budget, you're at risk. You're at tremendous risk. Now, we're all at risk to a degree. Okay, even if you save $1,000 a month, you lose your job. Your spouse gets sick, your child gets sick, something terrible happens. Listen, this is why insurance exists. You can be wiped out. Everyone's at risk of that unless you're just mega wealthy, and most of us aren't, present company included. But so I don't want this to seem, because a straw man argument would be, well, anyone can be wiped out. Yeah, they can. But I'm talking about someone, think about it, who couldn't afford their life to begin with. They got a second job in order to make sure they could just get by, and also so they could get that car, and now they're right back where they were. Only instead of losing money, they're right at even, or maybe they're losing a few bucks a month. It doesn't take much. If you're negative 100 a month, you won't feel it right away, but give yourself a couple of years, watch what happens. Anyways, the moral of the story here is it's not enough to live at your means. You need to live below your means. And if you're not there right now, you have 3 choices. You can increase your income and not increase your expenses at the same time. You can lower your expenses and not lower your income at the same time. Or you can do both. Okay, increase income and lower expensive. That's the best one. Have a good day.